there we have it. Now we finally have real, proper gameplay of Sonic Frontiers. Not just wandering around in an open world, actual gameplay, which gives me more to focus my thoughts upon. Very importantly, it's just, let's get this out the way, this trailer is clearly better than the one we received previously. We have a better idea of what's going on. That one was focused on exploration, but it was still a bit vague. This one was focused on combat, but it was a lot clearer on how everything's going to work. So yeah, this is absolutely better than what we saw last time around. Now, as far as combat goes for Sonic, he's had a very precarious relationship with it, and most of the time it's just absent. You destroy an enemy in one hit, but there have been a few other examples that this hasn't been the case. One of the first enemies we get to see is this blob-looking thing, which reminds me a lot of some of the classic bosses, in fact. But anyway, it's clearly functioning by having these balls that protect it, and you keep bursting them until you can hit the core. Not a overly complex idea, but in terms for Sonic, it's not a bad idea either. In fact, some of the enemies in SA2 had a similar function to this. What I would hope is that if you can catch the back of it after you've bursted some of the bubbles and get a direct hit on the core that way, being able to break it quicker would be really nice, because otherwise it seems like you've got to spend a little bit of time. A key thing to note is look at how often how many enemies are encountered at once. With these hovering things, so far we've only really seen them alone, not just in this trailer either. And then add on top of that the amount of time it takes to defeat just one of them, and it seems like that's intentional, because in a normal Sonic game, like I said a minute ago, you just destroy something and move on. If you were focused for too long on the same enemy, that would get annoying. So since they made these enemies more defensive, it looks like they're trying to balance it out by putting less of them. Although that does have the adverse effect of making the open world still appear a bit shallow, because it's a really wide space and they're lowly populated, so that you don't get too annoyed with the combat. So that's a win and a lose scenario there. Sonic also has that finisher move. In fact, he's got two of them, one of which we've seen before, where he will jump back and either do many boosts or a big kick. It appears to be something you could just do on demand. It's probably an unlockable skill. I don't know if there's a meter to manage it, because obviously we can't see the UI. Now, I know these look cool, but the thing you need to consider is how often are you going to be seeing them, because you can't act during that animation. It's scripted. You press the button, it will perform it, and until it's finished, you can't do anything. So yes, it will look cool, but after the 100th time, when you just want to get on with it, you might start thinking it's not that cool. If you've played fighting games with a super move, you might understand the concept I'm talking about here. At first, when you see super move, you're like, yeah, this is awesome. And then 500 games later, you may even avoid them just because it takes so much time and you're not doing anything. We do get to see a new sort of maneuver Sonic can do, where he throws a bunch of energy blades towards the enemy really rapidly. Functionally, I think this is really cool. It's obvious that those attacks individually don't do a lot of damage, but you throw out so many of them in such a short amount of time that they do rack up the damage. Feels like it would be satisfying to hit. It doesn't look like you can change it once it's activated though, so you can't redirect it if you slightly miss, which is unfortunate, but still, that's a move that I think could be fun to use. But after the blob enemy, we see these sort of dome protective shell enemies, and they do look a bit strange. Clearly they're going for this sort of alien, not very personable look for the enemies, which is fine. They're trying something new, but its function as this protective shell thing, I already think is going to be annoying. In Sonic Heroes, you had these turtle robots that, to damage them, you either had to flip them upside down or use your power character. And even they, if you didn't know the quickest way to deal with them, could get a bit annoying. as they keep slowing the game down. But they have nothing on these guys. They are impervious, it seems, to any sort of damage whilst their protective shielding is up. And either you have to wait for them to choose to try and attack you and expose themselves, or you can use that spin cycle move to flip the shell. Although, I'm still not quite sure how that works, because sometimes it rips the shell off, and sometimes it doesn't. It's really odd. And there's a bit that looks like it might bug out as well, where the enemy lifts its shield to attack, but then it cancels back into being protected, but the cancelling animation is really quick, as if it isn't supposed to work that way. Hard to say. When he's fighting that enemy, we also see that the rapid kick energy blast thing doesn't do a crazy amount of damage, because he lands a full shot of it and he still has to do it again to destroy the enemy properly, which is a bit of a worry, as some of the leaks said the combat was a bit button mashy, and both that fight and the blobby ball thing did feel a little bit button mashy. Sonic's kick combo is very reminiscent of Shadow's multi-hit combo in 06, and some people had a problem with that one. For me, I didn't mind it too much. There was only a few times where the game took the mick and made you have to fight a billion enemies. Something people may not remember or even notice though is Shadow's version of the move. It would have a hitbox way bigger than what Shadow actually should be able to hit, so that you could hit multiple enemies from your same spot without having to re-homing attack every time. Pretty underrated feature of that move if you ask me, but hey ho. Anyway, Sonic clearly doesn't seem to have such a maneuver, and after this we see him fight a bunch of smaller enemies. These ones seem like they're a lot more palatable. Sonic can just run up, beat them up, call it a day. A lot more like your classic enemies. I like that. Obviously they don't die in one hit, but that doesn't bother me. The point is they don't waste too much of your time. And maybe when you level up they will die in one hit as well, so it seems like a pretty fair enemy. All of the enemies when they've been defeated have dropped these sort of siren diamonds. These are probably your experience points. Now, this leveling up and earning skills and getting stronger sounds good on paper. But since this is an open world and a Sonic game, I do have a little bit of a reservation that they're going with such a experience-focused system, because it just feels like it's going to be a grind. Maybe a story mission will say you need to be level 15 before you can go, or maybe not that, but the enemies get so tough that you kind of do need to get to a certain level just to be able to beat a mission, even if there isn't an official restriction. Either way, if the only reason to fight enemies in the overworld is to gain those experience gems, or whatever the heck they are, then combat might feel very tedious. In a game like Breath of the Wild, enemies aren't fought to level up, because Link doesn't level up with XP. He collects hearts and things like that in the overworld to level up. So what enemies are actually for, apart from for fun, are getting new weapons or getting crafting items from defeating enemies. And both of those things are really important for just traversing the world and having enough weapons to fight in that game. And then in a normal Sonic game, the reason why you fight enemies are because you're on a linear-ish level where they're placed there to challenge you. Usually they're in the way, and sometimes defeating them helps you get somewhere else, so you've got numerous reasons to go for them. Now in this open world setting, where you've got experience points, but again it's open, why wouldn't you just run past all these guys all the time, unless it's because you really needed the experience to level up? That's sort of a worry for me. If the combat is super button mashy, and your only motive for doing it is to level up, and the only reason you want to level up are because the game locks things behind levels arbitrarily to force you to grind, that is how this becomes very annoying. If you can beat the game at whatever level you want, and it would just be harder if you didn't level up, that's a different story. But if they force you one way or the other to level up, and the only way to do it is by grinding out these random encounters in the overworld that you would otherwise just skip, yeah, that's gonna get old real fast. Of course though, the biggest part of this trailer, literally, would be the fight against the boss. Now the trailer, the original CGI trailer, made me think that these bosses would move, follow you in the overworld, very slowly, but I thought they would move. It doesn't seem that they do move. They are quite rooted in place. They're big, they are very big, but they don't move. And you might be thinking, okay, we get it, they don't move, why are you going on about it so much? Well, the problem with a boss like this that's big, slow, and doesn't move is you're basically never going to get hit by it. I know in the gameplay we get shown, the player has a couple close calls with this boss in terms of getting hit, but keep in mind they're trying to showcase the boss, so of course they're going to play it the way they want you to play it. But as you can see, it only slams down with one of its legs at a time, and those legs shoot down energy pulses once they're down. Every time it loses an appendage, it gets a new energy pulse onto its arm for damage and coverage that it didn't have before. So the closer to death it is, the harder it is to reach the top. But it isn't that much harder because they only change a couple of them and add a couple red ones. So it's not that much harder at all. Most importantly though, it doesn't seem to have any other way of attacking the player. So what you could do is if you stand under it, which we see the player do when they go to attack its legs, it doesn't have any attacks that hit you if you're directly under it. You even see it slam the ground normally as if it was going to hit Sonic, but it just can't because Sonic was under the boss. So all you'd have to do is wait for the enemy to slam its arm down by standing under it, and then go around the sides of the arm from the back and just jump on the side, which means you're never in the front cone of the leg. And if you notice, all of its projectiles shoot out in a front cone from its legs. So if you come from one of the back diagonals because you were under it, you can just jump on the side, climb up to the top, and then go under, and the boss can't do anything. And since it doesn't move, it can't reposition itself in a way that would make that harder for you to do. I don't know why they designed the boss this way, and maybe I'm missing something because I've only been able to see it for, what, 3 minutes? I don't know. Very possible. However, I think it is going to work the way I'm talking about. When you do get on top of it to beat it up, all you do is attack this defense mechanism and nothing happens. If you guys have seen the Egg Genesis boss from Sonic 06, it's a very similar concept. It's big, it's slow, it tries to hit you, and you can hurt it from both under and above it. The difference is when you're above it, the boss tries to shoot you off of it, and when you're under it, the boss has a bunch of henchmen that will try and shoot you before you can hit it. This boss doesn't. It's alone in an open area against someone as quick as Sonic, and yeah, he's slower in this game, but he's still faster than the boss. So you can just go under the boss, it can't hit you, it can't move, and you cheese it by jumping up the side and destroying it. Now, the good thing would be if these bosses respawn, or if there are a lot of them, you could just go to wherever they are, beat them up because they don't pose much of a challenge as I've just described, get the experience points that way, and not waste time grinding on those smaller enemies that take a long time to kill. That would help you circumvent a lot of the problems, except it still means that you're doing this to skip grinding that wasn't fun instead of having a good time fighting the bosses. So, win-loss, take what you can get. Sonic is shown to have a dodge roll at certain points in this trailer, which is a move I always thought would make sense for a more combat-focused Sonic game, since he's quick, and it also seems that there's some sort of perfect timing, freezing effect, where if you dodge right at the moment, the game slows down time for a second. But the way it comes off in this trailer, if I'm even right, maybe the trailer just stuttered, but if what I'm thinking does exist, it isn't actually letting you gain an advantage, it's simply freezing the whole game and then moving again, instead of freezing the game except for Sonic, which would make it just a visual thing and not useful in any way, shape or form. The move I praised earlier as well, where he's throwing out those energy blasts or whatever, in a way, it kind of makes me think, okay, maybe Tails and Knuckles won't be playable in this game, because what would they do for it? Sure, they could have Tails swing his tails rapidly and shoot wind blasts, and Knuckles just box rapidly and shoot red energy spears. For some reason, I just don't think they would do it. There's no existing animation of that. We haven't seen too many new animations that would require animating Tails and Knuckles anyway instead of Sonic. And the fact that Sonic has these abilities that he's not been shown to have before clearly shows they are a-okay with just giving Sonic whatever ability makes sense. We saw him climb in the previous trailer, which is something traditionally saved for Knuckles and Rouge. So all of this really seems to suggest that we won't be getting other playable characters. If we do, it would be Shadow, which would be still good for me because I'll just play Shadow all the day. But giving him the energy spears as well, I don't know. Maybe they just don't want you to play as anyone. Again, Shadow could still do everything Sonic is shown to do in this game, so he could be playable. It's just that if they're not going to let everyone else be playable, they might not let Shadow be playable either. You may not be bothered by that, but for me, playing as someone other than Sonic was something I was really looking forward to. So the fact that it's starting to look like that won't be happening again is a bit disappointing for me. Overall, how would I rate the combat? Yeah, it's hard to say until you play it. A lot of the time, you got to remember, is combat like this can feel better than it looks. Something can look repetitive because it might be mechanically repetitive, but it might feel good to play. So it's a bit hard to staple on. But I will say that the rumours of it being button mashing grindy certainly look like it's possible based on what we've seen here. And out of all the enemies we've seen, the one I have the most criticisms for would have to be the boss for everything I've said. That does seem to be very cheesable, and that would be unfortunate. How do I feel about Sonic Frontiers based on everything we know officially thus far? I think overworld exploring is going to have to be supported by another feature. Moving around as we've seen the world and fighting the enemies that we've seen right now with the combat moves we've seen isn't something I could see myself doing for more than 30 minutes, right? So this is forgetting about story, forgetting about any other objectives, just based on what we've seen. I couldn't imagine doing it for more than 30 minutes. The bosses seem to come down easily, the enemies themselves seem to come down easily, but just take a lot of time. Leveling up, we don't know how that works yet, but it's probably just to make the grind faster. And the world itself doesn't seem to have too much interesting geometry or momentum-based puzzles going on either. Now, based on things that we don't know for certain, the story, obviously we know there is a story, but we don't know in what way it's going to happen. Is it going to be a traditional Sonic story layout? Is it going to be more side questy? No idea. But if the story is interesting and they don't gate it behind level locks, that could be a good motivating factor to at least play through the story. Don't know if it's there. Chow Garden, similar thing. If it's there, it could be a motivation to play through these things, to grind up levels, to get items for your Chow. Chow are a great motivator for people interested in them, but we don't know if they're in the game. Yeah, cyberspace, we're really relying on you. It's never been confirmed or even mentioned by Sega, but of course, we've all heard the rumours of the cyberspace, where they're supposed to be traditional styled levels. If we had a very good amount of cyberspace levels, like a normal Sonic game, and then they're just connected in this open world where there are things going on that I will probably spend most of the time ignoring because they don't seem that deep, but as long as the cyberspace levels are there and they're proper, we've still got a good chance of this, you know, being a good experience. I'm not saying this is going to be a bad experience, but for someone like me that's played a lot of different open world and Sonic games, it's going to need a bit more to start making me super excited for it. But it's still better than Forces, so there's that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm sure everyone's got a lot to say based on what we've seen here. Again, it's better than last time, so can't complain too much until we get more information. I hope that you enjoyed my take on this. I'm trying to be as fair as I can towards it. I don't want to let leaks and rumours affect my opinion too much, since they've never actually been stated by Sega themselves. If you want to see more from me, leaving a like would help the video perform well, subscribing would let you see what I do, and just general conversation keeps me knowing what you guys want to see. But until then, I'd like to thank you for making it all the way to this end of this video, and I hope you have a great day. This is the Mighty Emperor, signing off.